So let's take a look at prospects, and we're going through the prospects as listed by the Future Watch Hockey News issue, and really this is the best collection of prospects you're going to see, and it tells you about everybody. Everybody's in here, top prospect. They have 10 for every single team. They do it every year, and every year it's fun to look at. The most fun is looking back and seeing where they're wrong. That's the most fun with it. And for that reason, I don't really get into grading prospect pools because you can look kind of foolish after, and yet you look kind of foolish through no fault of your own. So let's talk about prospects, and we'll start this off with a couple that have been in this prospect book for a while. We'll start off with Evgeny Svechnikov. Now, recently I said that I didn't think Svechnikov was going to end up being necessarily a top six forward for Detroit. See, I just tiptoe around it. I'm not going to say the word bust, but when I was doing a redraft, I was like, yeah, Svechnikov would get taken later. And there were Detroit fans that weren't happy. But yeah, I know Svechnikov missed last season with injury, but this year in Grand Rapids, 51 games played, 11 games, 14 assists, 25 points. And he played 4 games in Detroit, held without a point in those games. Now, he turns 24 on October 31st, and this is where the whole prospect talk gets kind of muddled. At what point does a team look and go, well, we're going to move on? And usually it's around age 24 or 25, where a guy who was a prospect becomes a project, and then he becomes a reclamation project, usually somewhere else. Now, in Future Watch, he was ranked 28th overall in the NHL among all prospects in 2016. He was ranked 20th in 2017, dropped to 65th in 2018, and though he's still in the book, he's not ranked in the top 100. He's not ranked as one of the top prospects for Detroit either. So this is what happens with prospects over time. Olli Juolevi in Vancouver, of course, famously taken kind of early. But in 2017's book, he was 15th overall. 2018, he was seen as 21st overall. And in last year's, he was ranked 66th. So he's dropped down. He's not in the top 100 now. And again, this is due to injury. Now, he turns 22 on May 5th, and he's a defenseman. So those two things combined tell you that the NHL, traditionally we've seen defensemen come up later, and teams will be more patient with defensemen than they are with forwards. And so Juolevi, his numbers in Utica this year, 45 games, 2 goals, 23 assists, 25 points. So, it's not a fantastic total at Utica, but it's good. And he may very well play for the Canucks next season. But I think that most of us have kind of dropped our expectation from where he was taken in the draft. So this is where the whole prospect ranking thing gets kind of muddled. So Svechnikov would have been seen 3 years ago as a really good young prospect for Detroit, and now he's middle of the road. Maybe he makes it, maybe he doesn't, maybe he goes somewhere else to make it. And Juolevi, again through injury for the most part, has gone from top-notch blue-chip prospect on the blue line to he's probably going to be a top 6 guy. It may take him a while to get into it. And this is what happens over the years. Now, they also have the projected draft picks for next year. And, of course, Ratty is projected to go number 1, which won't surprise anybody. Owen Power is projected to go number 2. He's a defenseman. Ratty's a center. And the third brother is projected right now at number 8, according to the Hockey News Future Watch issue, Luke Hughes. So he's a defenseman as well, and I'm telling you, if there was a team that wanted to pick up Luke Hughes, I would think either New Jersey or Vancouver would be very interested in picking him up in the draft if they can. But neither New Jersey nor Vancouver want to have the number 8 draft pick next year. They'd like to be drafting a lot later. That being said, who knows? Maybe Hughes moves up during the year. That's the thing with projected. We just don't know. Even the 2020 draft, and I've gone over that before. We'll go over it again in between now and draft day, which is hopefully this year. The draft, it's in flux past the top spot. It's Lafreniere's spot, but now it looks like Stützle might get into number 2, or maybe they keep it with Byram and don't forget Raymond. So when they project the overall prospect pools, right now they say Colorado has the best. Bowen Byram is ranked number 1 overall. Alex Newhook is number 13. The New York Rangers, they rank number 2. Igor Shesterkin is number 3. The number 3 team they have ranked is Ottawa. They have Brandstrom at number 12. And Calgary's number 29, Pittsburgh's 30, and San Jose's 31. Now, for Calgary, their highest ranked prospect is Juuso Välimäki, who they've got at 25th. Samuel Poulin in Pittsburgh is ranked number 38, and Ryan Merkley for San Jose is their top-ranked prospect. He's not in the top 100. San Jose has a real problem with their prospects. I'm wearing San Jose kind of like a way of rallying them. I don't know. I went with San Jose. Now, what's interesting to me is Välimäki is a highly thought of prospect. I understand Brandstrom is true, but what we've seen of these guys so far, I would make the argument that Välimäki's been more impressive to this point in his career as looking like he's NHL ready than Brandstrom. And now injuries could very well derail Välimäki, but could derail anybody, really, in all honesty. And when we get to the numbers, that's sometimes what happens. So this is why I don't like doing the rankings. There's no reason to think Poulin won't be a really good top 6 forward for Pittsburgh. There's a reason they kept that first round pick. And so it really gets into something else that I think is interesting. The first round draft picks will almost always have a high ranking in Future Watch. And then if they don't hit, their ranking drops the next year. Even though they may not have had a bad year, but they don't quite make it. So again, it's kind of hit and miss. So they've talked about their last few years and 5 years and 10 years and all this. And so 5 years ago, they had Sam Reinhart at number 1. So Sam Reinhart was the number 1 overall prospect according to Future Watch 5 years ago. Sam Bennett was number 2 and Leon Draisaitl was number 3. They had Nick Ehlers at 4, Max Domi at 5. Now, the interesting ones outside of that, Griffin Reinhart was 13, Matthew Dumba was 26, Zach Fucale was 32. Remember when Montreal drafted Fucale and Montreal fans were all excited and said, "This is great, we've got the future starter. After Price is done, we've got it." Fucale looked like he was a steal for Montreal. And I agreed at the time that, hey, Fucale, this kid's going to be great. Jacob Vrana at 33. So the next spot after Fucale was Vrana. They had Santini, Steve Santini at 39, and Ryan Pulock at 40. It is an inexact science. 2010, they had Alex Pietrangelo as the number 1 overall prospect in the National Hockey League. Jacob Markstrom at number 2, Oliver Ekman-Larsson at 3, Cody Hodgson at 4, and John Carlson at 5. Cody Hodgson, a good example of a guy who was a highly thought of prospect, and it just didn't work. And, he's retired now, and it just didn't work. It didn't work with him at the NHL level. And that's sometimes what happens. Now, of course, what's interesting with that is the fact that John Carlson's after Cody Hodgson. Again, you don't have any way of knowing back in 2010 how this is going to turn out. Nikita Filatov at number 7, Braden Shen at number 10. Nikita Filatov, of course, flamed out. Crazy flamed out. Chris Kreider at 22. I would think he'd be ranked a little higher now if we re-ranked them. Chet Pickard was at 26. I remember Chet well. Danny Cristo was at number 35. And then you got Lars Eller at 46. So again, with prospects, we really don't know. Now, number 1 in 2022 is likely Shane Wright, who got exceptional status and is seen as very likely the number 1 draft pick 2 years down the road. Now, what I also wanted to get to wasn't just this and all of its wonderfulness. Because again, it is an inexact science, and it's interesting to look through this and say, well, who's going to be the next guy who flames out? But again, I would just be throwing names at a wall and going, that'll be this guy. So if we look back to the oldest one I have, which is 2007, and there's a fresh-faced Eric Johnson on the cover, as he was the number 1 overall prospect that year, I do believe. Not only that, but 07 draft field wide open. They had Patrick Kane at number 1. Yep. James Van Riemsdyk at number 2. Sure. Carl Alsner at number 3. Kyle Turris at 4. Sam Gagner at 5. Angelo Esposito at 6. Alexei Sharapanov at 7. Rest in peace. 8. Jacob Voracek. 9. Brandon Sutter. And 10. Keaton Ellerby. So, yeah. And there's a good picture of Jacob Voracek right there. So these are worth having just because that was Voracek 13 years ago. He fresh-faced. And then The 2008 sneak peek is Pronger type, heads '08 draft Pronger type, and that Pronger type is Colton Tubert. So, and then they've just got Stamkos down here in the corner, just a little right up here on Stamkos. Big thing on Colton Tubert, and just a little thing on Stamkos. And that's where things get kind of... OHL draft 07, 5 to watch. Matthew Duchesne, good call. Cam Fowler, yep. Taylor Hall, absolutely. Peter Holland, Michael Latta, yeah. QMJHL 5 to watch. Stephen Anthony, who of course was part of the Luongo trade. Simon Dupre, Matt Brown, Louis LeBlanc, and Charles Olivier Roussel. WHL Draft 07, 5 to watch. Quentin Howden, Charles Inglis, Luke Moffat, Mark Pesic, and Connor Raymond. Raymond is a mean-spirited wrecking ball. He hurts people with his hits, and he's strong as a horse, a scout said. And that's where things get dicey when you're trying to make predictions. They had Pittsburgh as the number one prospect system in 2007, which turns out to be pretty good. They've won Stanley Cup since then. Number 2 is Washington. They've won a Stanley Cup since then. Then they go to Nashville, LA. LA's won 2. Chicago, so this was 07. This is before they won their Stanley Cups. Boston, they win in 11. Anaheim, St. Louis. St. Louis, of course, just won it. So almost all of the Stanley Cup winners were in the top 8 overall back in 2007. I'm saying almost because I'm trying to think, did any of these other ones win a Stanley Cup after that? Well, I mean, Detroit did, but that was right after. So yeah, Pittsburgh's number 1. Let's take a quick look here at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's system at that point, they had Chris Letang, who was rated 10th overall. Noah Welch, who was 48th overall. Alex Goligoski, not in the top 100. Ryan Stone, Jonathan Filewich, Carl Sneap, Tyler Kennedy, Dan Carcillo. He's at 9th in here. Scoring touches improved, still feisty, must cut down on bad penalties, is what they said about Daniel Carcillo. Steven Dixon and Brian Strait. Brace yourself for the blue line phase of the Pittsburgh Penguins youth movement, already blessed with a talented core of youth players. As perhaps any team in history, the Pens will welcome a couple of impressive additions next season, including ace, offensive defenseman Chris Letang, and polished prospect Noah Welch. I remember wanting Noah Welch to make it too. Okay, now the number 30 overall prospect pool is Tampa's. So some things just don't change. So Tampa, their top-ranked prospect was Riku Helenius, I should say, who's a goaltender, ranked 41st overall. Number 2 is Kari Ramo. Matt Smaby. Vasily Koshechkin. Vladimir Mahalik. Blair Jones. Kevin Quick. Andy Rogers. Mike Egner. And Jonathan Boughton. So, yeah, story checks out there. It checks out pretty well. All right, well, let's take a look at the prospect pool for Carolina, who were ranked 29th. And then I'll move on to the next one. Carolina had Jamie McBain. None of these guys are top 100. Justin Peters, Harrison Reed, Bobby Hughes, Joe Barnes, Nicholas Blanchard, Daniel Manzatto, Casey Borer, Brett Carson, and Kyle Lawson. So, yeah, there are teams that just didn't have it. Now, the 09 one, this one's always kind of interesting because you're looking at Cody Hodgson on the front. He was going to be the captain. I remember thinking he's going to be a captain at some point. He's going to be the Canucks captain. And I do believe they had, for the 09 group, they had Hodgson at one of the top spots. Okay, so here's your top 5 from the 2009 issue, which they don't talk about because it wasn't 5 or 10 years ago. Nikita Filatov was number 1. Number 2 was Cody Hodgson. Number 3 was Jacob Markstrom. Number 4, Colin Wilson. Number 5, Alex Pietrangelo. They had Erik Karlsson in 7th. Claude Giroux was in 8th. Pacioretty was 10th. Tuukka Rask in 11th. Lucas Biza was 13th. And PK Subban 15th. 16th was Zach Boychuk. Do I get a follow for that? No? All right. Jordan Eberle at 17th. Evgeny Grachev, 19th. And then you got Corey Schneider down here in 26th. John Carlson, 27th. But again, when you look at it, there are a lot of times where there's a bias in favor of the guys who get drafted early. So, all right, let's take a look at where we're at in the pools here. The Kings ranked first. So let's take a look at the Kings list. Jonathan Bernier, who was 23rd overall. Colton Tubert, who's 30th overall. Thomas Hickey, 31st overall. Vyacheslav Voinov, who's 60th overall. So Slava Voinov. Trevor Lewis, Andrei Lokchinov, Jeff Zatkov, Martin Jones was at 8th below Zatkov. Training camp surprised, earned a contract, and is a dark horse in a goalie race. Andrew Campbell and Lyndon Rowett. So, kind of interesting right there. And then the lowest ranked prospect pool is, I do believe, New Jersey's. What's old is new again. Devils develop like glory days after dearth of picks and prospects. Matthias Tedemby is their number one prospect in here. Nicholas Bergfors, Matt Carenti, Jeff Frazee, Peter Vrana, Patrice Cormier, Matt Halischuk, Mike Hoffel, Alexei Vasyunov, and Anssi Somela. So, yeah. All right. So this is the trick. We can talk about who has the best prospect pool right now. We can look back years down the road and say, well, maybe. This is why I try not to rank prospect pools in general. Because, again, and one thing I've discovered on this channel over the last, I'll say 4 years, is people get really, really sensitive about prospects. There are two topics you've got to watch, and that's goaltenders and prospects. Even if a goaltender has a safe percentage of 843, 825, people will still say, hey, all of his goals are 5-hole right now, but really it's the defense in front of him. And with prospects, if you say, well, he didn't look very good in a call-up, hey, he's only 25. He was a first-round draft pick. Give him time. So, again, this is from the Hockey News issue, which I do recommend people pick up. I do. It's one of those ones that's worthwhile every year because you can look back. I've got a very fresh-faced looking Braden Shen right here wearing his Kings gear, which of course he's not currently wearing. You've got Nazem Kadri on the cover of the 2010 issue. Really, it's not a happy looking picture. Did they tell him not to smile? Like, I don't know. It's did the Leafs finally have a go-to stud? If that means go to Colorado, then yes. And that's yeah, I'll take a look at this one because this one's an interesting one too. Number 1, Alex Pietrangelo. Number 2, Jacob Markstrom. This is 2010. So, what else did they have that they're not telling me? Because they've got 50. Oh, they didn't go to 100 back then. They now do a top 100. Back then, they just did the top 50. The number 1 overall prospect pool then was Colorado. Colorado yet again. Where they had Kevin Shattenkirk, Ryan Stoa. They were both in the top 100. Colby Cohen, Cameron Gauntz, Mike Carman, Mark Olver, Stephen Elliott, Tyson Barrie is 8th behind Stephen Elliott, Brandon Maxwell, and Justin Mercier. Now, this very, very well be that they're counting the players who are already in the NHL as part of it. Oh, no, that's handicapping the system. They're ranked 3rd. Number 1 was still LA. So, yeah, number 1 was still LA at that point. They have a system that they do, and it's actually kind of interesting where they say, okay, this team has drafted at this spot. Where are they on the future rankings and in terms of their prospects? And then the one that's the highest, that does the best, they have here, and the one that does the worst is down here. So a team might draft, say, on average 5th, but maybe their prospect pool is 16th, so they drop a lot, like they have a negative 11 as their score. Again, it's interesting, but it's not particularly scientific. Until these kids reach the NHL, we really don't know. So it's a fun topic on a Friday, which is, it's been hailing, snowing, raining, and sunny within an hour. So I'm pretty sure that this is all apocalyptic. I haven't seen any horses in the sky or anything. I'll let you guys know if I see any, but that's kind of the world we live in now, right? Okay, there you go. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Which prospects that you think are going to be great and which ones you think, nah, he's probably going to end up being a bust. I try not to do that, even though I do have some opinions on that, just because, again, I don't want it to feel like that I'm picking on certain prospects or certain teams, or that I'm favoring certain prospects and certain teams. I will just let you guys know when I really like a prospect, which guy I really like, but That's as far as I go because again, it's important on this channel that I try to remain as neutral as possible on all that. But I'm interested to know what you guys think. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.